Jung, one of the most important psychologists of the 20th century, believed that the first decades of our lives are not the main part of the story, but a preparation for what is to come. He said, "Life really begins at 40. Until then, you're just doing research." This idea is bold and goes against what many people think about growing old. We are taught to fear age, to see middle age as a period of decline, problems, or crises. Our culture is full of images and stories about the so-called midlife crisis, moments of fear, impulsive decisions, and attempts to stay young. But Jung invites us to think differently. What if this phase is not a crisis, but a moment of awakening? What if instead of being an end, it is a new beginning? To understand this, we need to think about what the first 40 years of life represent. These years are like a discovery phase, a period in which we accumulate experiences, form our identity, and learn how the world works. It's a time of rapid growth, where we absorb ideas and values from the people around us. But it's also a time full of questions. Who am I? What do I want to do with my life? What really makes me happy? These questions guide us in our youth, but the answers we find don't always seem complete. During these early years, we are trying to understand life while still discovering who we really are. We work to build careers, relationships, and families, often focused on achieving success and winning the approval of others. We are learning, facing challenges, and sometimes making mistakes. All of this helps us to grow. As Jung suggests in the archetypes and the collective unconscious, these years are like a preparation. It's a time of learning, a foundation for something deeper to come. When we get close to 40, we start to realize that the old ways of living no longer make us happy. The things that seemed so important, like moving up at work, fitting in with others, doing what's expected of us, begin to feel less enjoyable. We see that much of what we've done has been based on other people's ideas of success and happiness. A common example is people who decide to change careers completely at this stage. Think of an executive from a large company who, at the age of 45, decides to drop everything to open a guest house in a small town or follow a long-held dream, such as taking up photography. These decisions, which might previously have seemed impossible, begin to make more sense because they reflect more authentic desires. This discovery, although it can be confusing, also gives us a sense of freedom. It's the beginning of a new phase, a process that Jung called individuation, the path to becoming complete, living life in our own way. This change doesn't happen suddenly. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens slowly, often starting with small, silent questions. Is this all there is? Or, am I living the life I really want? These questions can appear in moments of reflection, such as an important event at work, a special birthday, or even a quiet evening alone. But when these questions arise, they don't go away. They grow stronger, asking for answers. And those answers require us to face ourselves in ways we've never done before. People may see this as a midlife crisis. It's easy to call these moments of questioning and change a problem, but Jung invites us to think differently. What if it's not a crisis? What if it's an opportunity? What if this phase of life, with all its challenges, doubts, and changes, is exactly what we need to become the person we were always meant to be? In Memories, Dreams, Reflections, Jung says, "Middle age is not the beginning of the end. It is the beginning of something much more real, meaningful, and authentic." To understand this idea, it's important to think about how we live the first half of our lives. During this period, we are focused on building what Jung called the persona, the identity we show to the world. The persona is shaped by our upbringing, culture, and the expectations of the people around us. It is the version of ourselves that seeks to please, fit in, and achieve success in the eyes of others. This phase is essential because it teaches us how to live in society and lays the foundations for our adult life. But the persona doesn't represent everything we are. For example, imagine someone who chose a career in medicine because it was their family's dream. This path, despite bringing prestige and recognition, may not reflect that person's true interests or passions. Gradually, they may begin to question whether they are living for themselves or to meet the expectations of others. It's like a mask, a role we play. Although it's useful, it's only part of our identity. The problem happens when we get too attached to it, believing that this mask is our true self. In middle age, we start to notice cracks in this persona. The roles we play, such as being a successful professional, a devoted parent, or a faithful partner, can start to feel limiting. This is when we realize that we are more than the image we project to others. This is where the real work begins. Jung called this process of going beyond the persona individuation. Individuation is the process of bringing together all the parts of who we are, not only the parts we show to the world, but also the dark, hidden sides we avoid or reject. The shadow, as Jung described it in Man and His Symbols, contains everything we don't accept about ourselves, our fears, insecurities, and repressed desires. Facing the shadow can be difficult and even painful, but it is an essential step towards growing as a person. Only by recognizing and accepting these parts of ourselves can we become complete. In middle age, the process of individuation becomes even more profound. The questions that arise are no longer about external success, but about inner satisfaction. What really matters to me? What do I want to leave as a legacy? What kind of life do I want to build from now on? These questions are very personal, and their answers cannot be found in what others expect of us. They require us to look inside ourselves and listen to our own inner voice. This inward look is usually accompanied by a change in what is important to us. When we are younger, we are often driven by ambition, the desire to compete and prove our worth. But in middle age, we start looking for something different: authenticity, true connections, and a deeper meaning to life. A person who, in their youth, devoted all their energy to gaining promotions at work may realize that the most important thing now is to spend more time with their family or invest in hobbies that bring them joy, such as gardening or writing. Life becomes less about doing and more about being. We no longer need to prove anything to anyone, but rather live in a way that is aligned with who we really are. Scientific studies show that this change is supported by transformations in the brain. Neuroscience research shows that as we get older, our emotional centers become more balanced. We become less impulsive and more reflective, which helps us to better control our emotions and face challenges more calmly and clearly. This emotional maturity allows us to make decisions based on our values, instead of letting ourselves be carried away by our fears. We stop living on automatic and start living intentionally and consciously. Middle age is not a period without challenges. In fact, it can be a phase full of changes and difficulties. Questioning who we are and rethinking our lives often requires us to leave behind old identities, relationships, or goals. This can feel like a loss, and it's easy to understand why some people see this phase as a crisis. But as Brené Brown points out, what we call a midlife crisis is often a moment of transformation. It's when we are challenged to abandon the idea of who we thought we should be in order to accept who we really are. This process of change can be confusing and complicated. It can include difficult conversations, major life changes, or periods of doubt. But at the same time, it is an incredible opportunity for growth and discovery. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist who survived the Holocaust, wrote that what most motivates human beings is the desire to find a purpose in life. In middle age, this desire to find meaning becomes even stronger. We no longer want to live by other people's rules and expectations. We're looking for a life that really makes sense to us, even if it's different from what we imagined. To do this, we need to face the fears that have held us back until now: fear of being judged, fear of failure, or fear of the unknown. These fears can be very difficult, but middle age gives us the opportunity to face them head on. This moment is a chance to change the story of our lives, to leave behind what is not good for us and to focus on what really matters. Abraham Maslow, one of the leading figures in humanistic psychology, called this process self-actualization, the desire to reach our full potential and become the best version of ourselves. In middle age, self-actualization takes on a deeper meaning. It's no longer about achieving external success or approval from others, but about finding inner satisfaction. It's about living a life that feels true and full of meaning. This path isn't easy, but it's very worthwhile. Studies show that people in their 40s and 50s often report higher levels of happiness and satisfaction with life than those in their 20s and 30s. They feel more connected to who they really are, less concerned with the opinions of others, and more focused on what brings joy and purpose to their lives. This is the gift of middle age, the freedom to live according to what really matters to us. Jung believed that this freedom comes when we fully accept who we are, with all our complexity. This means integrating the good and the difficult in us, our successes and failures, dreams and disappointments. It's about fully accepting ourselves, even the parts of us that we usually avoid. Jung wrote in the Red Book, "The scariest thing is to accept yourself completely, but it's also the most liberating. Middle age is not a time to regret what we have lost, but to value what we have gained: wisdom, clarity, and strength. It's a time to build a life that really reflects who we truly are, a life that feels authentic and complete. It's a time to stop just researching life and finally start living it." That's why middle age doesn't mark the beginning of the end, but the start of something much more significant. It's a turning point, an opportunity to embrace the life we were always meant to live. Although this journey can have its challenges, it is also incredibly rewarding. After all, as Jung said, life really begins at 40, not because we already have all the answers, but because we finally start asking the right questions.